The notification sound from my phone cut through the quiet of my apartment like a blade. I glanced at the screen, expecting another work email or spam message, but instead saw Jake's name lighting up the display. My heart did that stupid little skip it always did when he texted, even though I'd spent the last 3 years training it not to. "Hey man, you free tonight? Could use some company." I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Jake Morrison had been my best friend since college, and in all that time, he'd never once given me any indication that he saw me as anything more than his straight buddy Alex who happened to be gay. Not that I'd ever told him about the feelings that had been eating me alive since sophomore year. "Sure, what's up?" I typed back, keeping it casual even though my pulse had already started racing. "Just need to talk. Mind if I come over?" 20 minutes later, I heard his familiar knock on my door. When I opened it, Jake stood there looking disheveled in a way that was completely unlike him. His usually perfectly styled dark hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it, and his green eyes held an expression I couldn't quite read. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, but somehow he still managed to look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. It wasn't fair how effortlessly attractive he was. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "You look like hell." "Thanks for the pep talk," he replied, but there was no humor in his voice. He walked past me into the living room, and I caught a whiff of his cologne mixed with something else, something nervous and electric that made my skin prickle. I followed him, watching as he paced to the window and back, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Jake, what's going on? You're freaking me out." He stopped pacing and looked at me directly for the first time since arriving. "Can I ask you something, and will you promise to be honest with me?" "Of course." The words came out steadier than I felt. "When did you know?" "About being gay, I mean." The question hit me like a physical blow. In all our years of friendship, Jake had never asked me about my sexuality beyond the basic acknowledgement that I was gay, and he was cool with it. We'd never delved into the details, never had those deep conversations that I sometimes desperately wanted but never dared initiate. I started, then stopped, studying his face. "Why are you asking?" "Just answer the question, Alex. Please." I sank onto the couch, suddenly needing to sit down. I guess I always kind of knew, but I didn't want to admit it to myself until college. "When I met you, actually." His eyebrows shot up. "When you met me?" Heat flooded my cheeks, and I realized I'd said too much. I mean, that's when I started being honest with myself about who I was attracted to. College was when everything became clear. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then he moved to the couch and sat down next to me, closer than he usually did. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. What if someone thought they were straight their whole life, but then started having thoughts about their best friend? He asked quietly. My heart stopped beating entirely. "What kind of thoughts?" "The kind that keep you awake at night. The kind that make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself." His voice was barely above a whisper now. "The kind that make you wonder what it would feel like to kiss your best friend." I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. Jake Morrison, the guy who'd dated half the cheerleading squad in college, the guy who'd never shown even a flicker of interest in men, was sitting on my couch talking about wanting to kiss me. "Jake," I managed to say, "are you telling me you're having feelings for me?" He turned to face me fully, and I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear and confusion and something else that made my chest tight. "I don't know what I'm feeling. All I know is that for the past few months, I can't stop thinking about you. Not just as my friend, but as more. A few months." My voice cracked. "Remember that night we watched movies until 3 in the morning, and you fell asleep on my shoulder?" I remembered. It had been torture, being that close to him, feeling his chest rise and fall beneath my cheek, smelling his skin, and wanting nothing more than to turn my head and press my lips to his neck. "Yeah," I whispered. "That's when it started. I kept thinking about how right it felt, having you there like that. And then I started noticing other things. The way you laugh at my stupid jokes. The way you always remember how I like my coffee. The way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not paying attention." My stomach dropped. "How do I look at you?" "Like you want me," he said simply. And I realized that I wanted you to want me. More than that, I realized I wanted you back. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, could hear the traffic outside, could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. But I couldn't hear Jake breathing, and I couldn't make myself look at him. "Say something," he finally whispered. I don't know what to say. It was the truth. I'd fantasized about this moment 1,000 times, but in my fantasies, I'd always known what to do, what to say. In reality, I was terrified. Do you Do you feel the same way? I closed my eyes, knowing that this was the moment that would change everything between us, one way or another. Jake, I've been in love with you since college. When I opened my eyes, he was staring at me with an expression of wonder and relief and something that looked like joy. Really? Really? But Jake, you have to understand, this isn't just curiosity for me. This isn't something I can experiment with and then go back to being friends if it doesn't work out. If we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. I know, he said, and then he reached out and touched my face, his palm warm against my cheek. I'm scared too, Alex. I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what if. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I leaned into the touch without meaning to. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you'll help me figure this out. I'm asking if you'll be patient with me while I navigate something I've never felt before. And I'm asking if I can kiss you, because I've been thinking about it for months, and I think I might lose my mind if I don't. I searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation, but all I saw was sincerity and want and something that looked remarkably like love. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like he was testing the waters. But when I kissed him back, when I brought my hand up to tangle in his hair, he made a small sound in the back of his throat and deepened the kiss. His lips were warm and soft and tasted like the mint gum he always chewed, and kissing him was everything I'd imagined and nothing like I'd expected all at once. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Jake rested his forehead against mine, his eyes still closed. Wow, he whispered. Yeah, I agreed, my voice rough. Wow. He opened his eyes and looked at me, and I could see the amazement there, the realization that this was real, that we'd actually crossed that line. I can't believe I waited so long to do that, he said. I can't believe you wanted to do it at all. He pulled back slightly, his hands still cupping my face. Alex, I need you to understand something. This isn't just curiosity for me either. I know I said I was confused, and I am, but not about wanting you. I'm confused about what it means, about how to navigate being with a man when I've never even considered it before. But I'm not confused about my feelings for you. What are your feelings for me? He was quiet for a moment, his thumb still tracing patterns on my cheek. I think I love you, he said finally. I think I've been falling in love with you for a while now, and I was too stupid or too scared to recognize it. The words hit me like a physical force, and I had to close my eyes against the intensity of emotion that washed over me. Jake. I know it's complicated. I know I'm asking a lot, asking you to be with someone who's still figuring things out. But I want to try, Alex. I want to try with you. I opened my eyes and looked at him, this man I'd loved from afar for so long, who was now sitting on my couch telling me he loved me back. It felt like a dream, but the warmth of his hand on my face was very real. Okay, I said. Okay, let's try. The smile that spread across his face was blinding. He kissed me again, harder this time, with more confidence, and I let myself get lost in it. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I went willingly, pressing myself against him and marveling at how perfectly we seemed to fit together. When we broke apart this time, I was practically in his lap, and the position sent heat shooting through my body. Jake seemed to notice too, because his breathing had gotten heavier, and his hands were gripping my hips with just enough pressure to make me dizzy. Is this okay? He asked, his voice rough. More than okay, I managed to say. He kissed me again, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. His tongue traced my lower lip, and when I opened for him, he explored my mouth with a thoroughness that made my toes curl. I could feel his heart pounding against my chest, could feel the evidence of his arousal pressing against my thigh, and it was almost too much to process. Jake Morrison wanted me. Jake Morrison was hard because of me, because of kissing me, and the knowledge was intoxicating. I shifted in his lap, and he groaned against my mouth, his grip on my hips tightening. Alex, he whispered, and my name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Yeah, I want. I don't know exactly what I want, but I want more. I pulled back to look at him, and his pupils were dilated, his lips swollen from kissing. He looked wrecked and beautiful and uncertain all at once. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for, I told him. We can take this as slow as you need. What if I don't want to take it slow? The question sent a jolt of electricity through me. Then we don't take it slow. He kissed me again, hungrier this time, and his hands started exploring, sliding up my back, tangling in my hair, mapping the contours of my body like he was memorizing them. I let my own hands wander, tracing the muscles of his chest through his t-shirt, marveling at the fact that I was allowed to touch him like this. "Can we?" He started, then stopped, his cheeks flushing. "What? Can we go to your bedroom?" My heart nearly stopped. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure I want to be with you. I'm sure I want to touch you and have you touch me. The rest we can figure out as we go." I searched his face one more time, looking for any sign of doubt, but all I saw was wanted trust and love. "Okay." I stood up and held out my hand to him. He took it without hesitation, and I led him down the hall to my bedroom. Once we were there, standing next to my bed, some of the urgency seemed to drain out of the moment, replaced by something softer but no less intense. "I've never done this before," Jake said quietly. "With a guy, I mean." "I know. We'll go slow. We'll only do what feels good." He nodded, then reached for the hem of his t-shirt and pulled it over his head. I'd seen Jake shirtless countless times over the years, at the beach, at the pool, getting changed in locker rooms. But this was different. This time, he was undressing for me, and the knowledge made my mouth go dry. He was beautiful, all lean muscle and golden skin, and when he reached for my shirt, I let him pull it off. His hands immediately went to my chest, exploring, and I had to bite back a moan at the sensation of his fingers on my skin. "You're so warm," he murmured, and then he leaned forward and pressed a kiss to my collarbone. The touch of his lips on my skin was electric, and I couldn't stop the small sound that escaped me. Jake pulled back to look at me, and there was something almost predatory in his expression. "I like that sound," he said, and then he kissed my neck, right below my ear, and I made the sound again. "Jake," I breathed, and he hummed against my skin. His hands continued their exploration, mapping every inch of my torso, and when his thumb brushed over my nipple, I gasped and arched into the touch. He did it again, more deliberately this time, and I had to grab his shoulders to steady myself. "Is that good?" he asked, and I could hear the wonder in his voice. "So good," I managed to say. He experimented with different touches, different pressures, watching my face for reactions, and I realized that he was learning my body, figuring out what made me respond. The thought was incredibly arousing. When he started kissing his way down my chest, I thought I might pass out from the intensity of it. His mouth was hot and wet against my skin, and when he sucked gently on my nipple, I cried out and threaded my fingers through his hair. "God, Jake," I gasped, and he looked up at me with dark eyes. "I want to make you feel good," he said. "Tell me what you like." The request was so earnest, so genuine, that it made my chest tight with emotion. "I like everything you're doing. I like your hands on me. I like your mouth on me." He smiled and continued his exploration, kissing and touching until I was trembling with need. When his hand moved to the button of my jeans, he paused and looked up at me. "Can I?" I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he slowly undid my jeans and slid them down my legs. I stepped out of them, leaving me in just my boxers, and Jake sat back on his heels to look at me. "You're beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made my eyes burn. "So are you," I replied, and I meant it. He was gorgeous, kneeling there in front of me with his hair messed up and his lips swollen, looking at me like I was something precious. He stood up and kissed me again, and I could feel his arousal pressing against me through his jeans. I reached for his belt, and he didn't stop me as I undid it and pushed his jeans down. When he kicked them aside, we were both left in just our underwear, and the sight of him, hard and wanting, made my knees weak. We moved to the bed, and Jake pulled me down beside him, his hands immediately finding my skin again. We kissed and touched, exploring each other with growing confidence, and when he slipped his hand inside my boxers and wrapped his fingers around me, I thought I might die from the pleasure of it. "Is this okay?" he asked, and I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Perfect," I gasped. "It's perfect." He stroked me slowly, experimentally, and I had to bury my face in his neck to muffle the sounds I was making. He felt so good, his hand warm and sure, and when I reached for him in return, he groaned and pressed himself into my touch. We moved together, learning each other's rhythms, and it was clumsy and perfect and overwhelming all at once. When Jake kissed me again, it was with a desperation that matched my own, and I knew we were both close to the edge. "Alex," he whispered against my lips, "I'm going to." "Me too," I managed to say, and then we were both falling apart, clinging to each other as waves of pleasure crashed over us. Afterward, we lay tangled together, breathing hard, and I couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Jake was quiet beside me, his head on my shoulder, and I could feel the tension in his body. "Hey," I said softly, turning to look at him. "You okay?" He lifted his head to meet my eyes, and I could see a dozen different emotions flickering across his face. "I think so." That was intense. Good intense or bad intense? "Good," he said quickly. Definitely good. I need a minute to process. I nodded, understanding. This was a lot for him to take in, and I didn't want to push. Take all the time you need. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my chest. Alex. Yeah, I don't regret this. I want you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever I'm feeling right now, I don't regret being with you. Relief flooded through me. I'm glad. I think I might need some time to figure out what this all means, though. Not about us, but about me. About who I am. That's okay, I said, even though the words scared me. I understand. He propped himself up on his elbow to look at me. I don't want you to think I'm running away, or that this was just an experiment for me. It wasn't. What I feel for you is real, Alex. I just need to understand what it means for the rest of my life. I reached up and touched his face, and he leaned into the contact. I get it, Jake. This is new for you, and it's a lot to process. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. He smiled and leaned down to kiss me, soft and sweet. I should probably go, he said when we broke apart. I need to think, and I can't do that when you're looking at me like that. Like what? Like you love me. I do love you. I know. And I love you too. That's the one thing I'm completely sure about. We got dressed slowly, neither of us wanting to break the spell of intimacy that surrounded us. When Jake was ready to leave, he kissed me one more time at the door. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. I'll be here. After he left, I sat on my couch in the same spot where everything had started just a few hours earlier. My body still hummed with the memory of his touch, and I can still taste him on my lips. It felt like a dream, but the lingering scent of his cologne on my skin was proof that it had really happened. Jake Morrison had kissed me. Jake Morrison had told me he loved me. Jake Morrison had touched me and let me touch him, and it had been everything I'd ever fantasized about and more. But as the initial euphoria began to fade, doubt crept in. What if he woke up tomorrow and regretted everything? What if the reality of being with a man was too much for him to handle? What if I just ruined the most important friendship in my life? I tried to push the negative thoughts away, focusing instead on the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd said my name, the way he'd held me afterward. Those things had been real. His feelings had been real. I just had to trust that they would still be real in the morning. The next day passed in a haze of nervous energy. I checked my phone obsessively, waiting for Jake's promised call, but as the hours ticked by with no word from him, my anxiety grew. By evening, I was convinced that he'd had second thoughts, that he was avoiding me, that everything we'd shared had been a mistake in his eyes. When my phone finally rang at 9 o'clock, I nearly dropped it in my haste to answer. Hello? Hey. Jake's voice was soft, tentative. Sorry I didn't call earlier. I've been driving around all day, thinking. It's okay, I said, even though it wasn't really. How are you feeling? Confused. Scared. But also, happy, I think. Happy. About us. About last night. I keep replaying it in my mind, and every time I do, I smile. Relief washed over me so intensely that I had to sit down. I've been thinking about it too. Alex, can I ask you something? Anything. When you came out, was it hard? I mean, changing how you saw yourself. I considered the question carefully. It was terrifying at first. I'd spent so long trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be that admitting the truth felt like admitting I'd been lying to everyone, including myself. But once I stopped fighting it, once I accepted who I was, it was actually liberating. I think that's where I am right now. Fighting it. You don't have to fight anything, Jake. You can just be whoever you are. What if I don't know who that is anymore? Then you figure it out. And you don't have to figure it out alone. He was quiet for a moment. Can I see you tonight? My heart leaped. Of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, he looked more settled than he had the night before, but there was still uncertainty in his eyes. We sat on the couch again, but this time he immediately reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. I've been thinking about labels, he said without preamble. Gay, straight, bisexual. Trying to figure out which box I fit into. And I realized I don't care about the boxes. I care about you. The simplicity of the statement took my breath away. Jake. I know I might never be attracted to another man. I know this might be something that's specific to you to us. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to understand it completely to know that it's real. What are you saying? He turned to face me fully, his green eyes intense. I'm saying I want to be with you. I want to try this, really try it, not as an experiment, but as a relationship. I want to see where this goes. Are you sure? Because, Jake, I meant what I said yesterday. This isn't casual for me. If we do this, if we're together, I need to know you're all in. I'm all in, he said without hesitation. I love you, Alex. I'm in love with you. And I want to be your boyfriend, if you'll have me. The word boyfriend on his lips made my chest tight with emotion. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll have you. He smiled and leaned forward to kiss me, and this time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. This time, he kissed me like he meant it, like he was claiming me, and I kissed him back with everything I had. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I have no idea what I'm doing, he admitted. Neither do I replied. We'll figure it out together. Over the next few weeks, we did exactly that. We navigated the awkwardness of transitioning from friends to lovers, learning each other's boundaries and preferences. Jake was eager and attentive, asking questions about everything from the mechanics of gay sex to the politics of coming out. He wanted to understand not just how to be with me, but how to be part of my world. The physical side of our relationship developed naturally. Jake's initial nervousness gave way to enthusiasm as he discovered what he liked and what made me respond. He was a generous lover, focused on my pleasure as much as his own, and the trust between us made everything feel safe and right. But it wasn't just about sex. Jake threw himself into being my boyfriend with the same intensity he brought to everything else in his life. He held my hand in public, kissed me goodbye in the morning, introduced me as his boyfriend to new people we met. He was proud to be with me, and it showed. The first time he said, I love you, during sex, I nearly cried from the intensity of it. The first time he let me make love to him completely, he did cry, overwhelmed by the intimacy and trust it required. Each milestone in our relationship felt monumental, a step further away from who we'd been and toward who we were becoming together. 3 months in, we were lying in bed after making love, and Jake was tracing lazy patterns on my chest. Can I tell you something? He said quietly. Always. I used to think that being with you would make me less of who I was. Like I'd have to give up some part of myself to be gay, or bisexual, or whatever label fits. And now I think being with you makes me more of who I am. Like you bring out parts of me I didn't even know existed. I turned to look at him, struck by the sincerity in his voice. What kind of parts? The part that's not afraid to be vulnerable. The part that can love without reservation. The part that's brave enough to be honest about what I want. You were always brave, Jake. Not about the things that mattered. Not about love. He kissed me then, soft and lingering, and I marveled at how natural it had become, how right it felt to be held by him, loved by him. Alex. I'm glad you waited for me. Even though you didn't know you were waiting. I smiled against his lips. I'm glad you finally caught up. I'm glad I was brave enough to tell you I was curious. You were more than curious. Yeah, he agreed, his hand finding mine and squeezing. I was in love. I just didn't know it yet. As we lay there in the darkness, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this point. From friends to lovers, from uncertainty to commitment, from hiding our feelings to celebrating them. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment of fear and doubt. Jake shifted beside me, pulling me closer, and I felt the familiar surge of gratitude that this beautiful, complicated man had chosen me, had been brave enough to explore his feelings and strong enough to act on them. What are you thinking about? He murmured against my hair. Just this. Us. How lucky I am. We're both lucky. Yeah, I agreed, pressing a kiss to his chest. We are. In the months that followed, our relationship continued to deepen and evolve. Jake came out to his family, a process that was easier than he'd expected but still emotionally draining. His parents were supportive, his sister was thrilled to finally have someone to double date with, and his friends from work welcomed me into their circle without question. We moved in together after 6 months, combining our lives in ways both practical and profound. Jake's clothes mixed with mine in the closet, his coffee mug sat next to mine in the kitchen sink, his books filled the empty spaces on my shelves. It was domestic and wonderful and everything I'd never dared to hope for. The first time someone called us a cute couple, Jake beamed with pride. The first time we attended a wedding together as dates, he held my hand during the ceremony and whispered that he wanted that someday, with me. The first time we said, I love you, in front of other people, it felt like a declaration, a claiming, a promise. There were challenges, of course. Jake occasionally struggled with internalized doubts about his sexuality, wondering if he was gay enough, or if his lack of attraction to other men meant something was wrong with him. I reassured him that love didn't come with requirements or qualifications, that what mattered was what we felt for each other, not how it fit into societal expectations. We had our first real fight about 6 months in, when Jake's ex-girlfriend reached out and he was honest with her about our relationship. She reacted poorly, accusing him of having been in the closet their entire relationship, and Jake came home hurt and angry and taking it out on me. We worked through it, talking until 3 in the morning about insecurity and trust and the ways that other people's opinions couldn't be allowed to poison what we built together. We had our first, "I can't imagine my life without you" conversation on a rainy Sunday morning, lying in bed with coffee and the newspaper spread between us. Jake looked up from the sports section and said it casually, like he was commenting on the weather, but I could see the depth of feeling in his eyes. "Good," I replied, reaching over to touch his face. "Because you're stuck with me. Promise. Promise." A year in, Jake surprised me with a weekend trip to the cabin where we'd first talked about our feelings. We spent the days hiking and the evenings making love by the fireplace, and on our last night there, he told me he'd been thinking about the future. "What kind of future?" I asked, curled against his side. "The kind where we're old and gray and still disgustingly in love. The kind where we have a house and maybe a dog and people roll their eyes at how cute we are together." "That sounds perfect." "The kind where I get to call you my husband someday." My breath caught. "Jake." "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "Not yet. But I want you to know that's where my head is. That's what I want. It's what I want too." "Good. Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to love you for the rest of my life, and I'd like to make it official eventually." 2 years in, he did propose, on the anniversary of that first night when he'd shown up at my door confused and scared and brave enough to tell me how he felt. He got down on one knee in my living room, in the exact spot where we'd first kissed, and asked me to marry him with tears in his eyes and a ring that was perfect in every way. I said yes before he'd even finished the question. Our wedding was small and intimate, surrounded by family and friends who'd watched our love story unfold with joy and support. Jake cried during his vows, and I cried during mine, and when the officiant pronounced us married, Jake kissed me like his life depended on it. "I love you, husband," he whispered against my lips, and the words sounded like coming home. "I love you too, husband." Now, 5 years later, I still sometimes can't believe this is my life. Jake is everything I never dared to dream of, a partner who loves me completely and shows it every day. He's confident in his identity now, comfortable with the label of bisexual but more comfortable with the label of mine. He's the man who brings me coffee in bed every morning, who holds my hand during movies, who tells everyone who'll listen how much he loves his husband. Sometimes I think about that night when he showed up at my door, nervous and confused and asking about curiosity. I think about how brave he was to explore those feelings, to be honest about his attraction, to risk our friendship for the possibility of something more. He wasn't just curious, though he thought he was at the time. He was in love, falling hard and fast and fighting it every step of the way until he couldn't fight anymore. The way he touched me that first night, reverent and desperate and sure, told me everything I needed to know about his feelings, even when he didn't understand them himself. Love isn't always convenient or expected or easy to categorize. Sometimes it sneaks up on you, challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself, forces you to be braver than you ever imagined you could be. Sometimes it comes disguised as curiosity, as friendship, as something safe and manageable until suddenly it's everything. Jake taught me that love is worth the risk, worth the fear, worth the leap of faith it takes to trust someone with your heart. He taught me that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never saw coming, the ones that change everything in the most beautiful way possible. And every morning when I wake up next to him, when I see his face on the pillow beside mine and feel the solid warmth of his body against me, I'm grateful for his courage. I'm grateful that he was curious enough to explore his feelings, brave enough to act on them, and strong enough to build a life with me. My straight friend said he was just curious, but the way he touched me said he was in love. And thank God for that, because loving Jake Morrison has been the greatest adventure of my life.